Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us this afternoon to what is perceived to be a jam-packed program that we have for you on this webinar. Before we actually proceed with our program, I noticed that there are still a few people joining us, but as we had indicated, we're going to be starting promptly at 2 o'clock, and we have a number of speakers, so we are actually going to proceed. I just wanted to, my name is Malini Padiachi Saman. I am the CEO of MPA Mott, and I have the privilege and honor of being your program director this afternoon. I would like to just quickly share with you a few ground rules. We are actually encouraging the participants to engage with us, as this is a very important webinar, and we would like to possibly understand some of the questions that you would like to pose to the panelists. Hence we encourage you to pose your questions in the chat group, and we will actually field them at the end of the session once all our panelists have had an opportunity to share with you some of their experiences. The session is going to be recorded, and the recording and the presentation slides of some of the panelists will be shared post the webinar series. I would like to suggest that microphones and videos to be muted and turned off when not in use as we proceed with the webinar. So why are we here today? It's an interesting gathering of phenomenal women who will be sharing their stories with you, and I will then very randomly pose them with a few questions that you might have, as well as questions that I've gathered that would be relevant in terms of exploring what does this mean, how do we actually contribute in terms of learning from each other. The topic, as you are all aware, is Women in Engineering, Powering Progress Through Inclusion. This particular webinar is being co-hosted by ASSAf as well as SAAE. I just wanted to maybe share just a phenomenal stats with you before we actually kicked off. All of you are aware of the background and how this particular webinar has been framed, but we also are grappling with the fact that internationally and nationally, women remain a minority in the engineering field. And the latest stats from ASSA indicate that within our South African context, we have around a 16% representation of females in the sector. That is extremely low. So how do we change that narrative? And how do we move that dial a lot faster? These are the questions that I think, collectively we need to be focusing on and answering. And I'm hoping that our panel would provide us with some of those answers that we actually are looking for. But without further ado, I would like to take this opportunity to hand over to Dr. Twala, who is representing ASSAf, and who will tell us a bit more about the organization. Dr. Malusi Twala has quite an incredible bio, and I'm just snippets of it to share with you today is that he is actually the manager of the Science Advisory and Strategic Partners at the Academy of Science of South Africa. And he will tell us a bit more about the Academy. He is a research associate at Nelson Mandela University and the University of the Free State. Dr. Twala was a member of the DSI platform for nano health, safety, and environmental risk assessment, responsible for leading the water node of the platform. I would like to, at this point, hand over to Dr. Twala, who will actually share a bit more about ASSAf with us. Dr. Twala, over to you, please.
Thank you, our program director, Ms. Malani Pariachi Saman. Greetings to you and greetings to all the colleagues on board. And yes, my name is Melusi Twala from the Academy of Science of South Africa. And on behalf of the ASSAf president, Professor Thokozani Majozi, I would like to share with you the following remarks, colleagues. Within its mandate, ASSAf promotes public interest as well as awareness in science and science education. Due to the country's history, participation in science, technology, engineering, and innovation has not been inclusive, and it remains largely so. Gender imbalance remains a priority challenge in addressing transformation and inclusivity within the national system of innovation. Our local indicators on science, technology, and innovation, as well as engineering, continue to show this gender imbalance. Be it in female learners that take up STEM-related subjects at high school and continue to write matric exams on STEM-related subjects, be it in first-year tertiary registration of STEM-related courses and follow-up or subsequent graduations, there remains gender imbalances. The figure is even more skewed when we're talking of doctoral degrees holders, as well as professorship holders that are female within the national system of innovation. This includes engineering. So as the official National Academy, we seek to address or contribute to addressing these gender imbalances within the national system of innovation overall. And hence, we are therefore excited to be co-hosting today's webinar on women in engineering. Our transformation agenda is continuous throughout the year and doesn't only come alive during our month of August. We are grateful to the Academy of Engineering for partnering with us today in showcasing and celebrating female engineers, and we are hoping that we'll draw insights from the different speakers with how we can actually improve our transformation with regards to gender imbalances within our NSI. We are also grateful to the program director and the speakers, as well as the participants, for dedicating your time to attend today's session, and we look forward to a vibrant engagement. I thank you, and back to you, program director.
Thank you, Dr. Twala, for the background as well as the introduction related to this particular webinar. Before I proceed on to our next speaker, I actually felt it appropriate that I should maybe share with you, as this particular webinar series is being co-hosted by SAAE, which is the South African Academy of Engineers, of which I am a fellow of, together with other panelists on this group. And I think it's appropriate if I could just give you a very brief synopsis of SAAE and what we do. The South African Academy of Engineering, or otherwise known as SAAE, is a non-profit independent institution with about 214 members. It functions as a voluntary association under its own constitution and follows the model of academies of engineering in many countries around the world. The Academy comprises of eminent engineers of all disciplines and related professionals with a proven ability and achievement. The SAAE maintains relationships with overseas academies of engineering, and in 2009 was admitted as a member of the International Council of Academies of Engineering and Technological Sciences, or CATS, otherwise known as CATS. In April 2025, the South African Academy of Engineering signed a memorandum of understanding with the Academy of Science of South Africa, which is ASSAf, formalizing a strategic partnership to foster collaboration across science, engineering, and innovation. One of the key areas of collaboration is the co-hosting of events and dialogues on science and engineering topics. This particular webinar series is a result of this cooperation. So we're really excited to have you on board in this particular webinar. That gives you a very brief synopsis of SAAE. And I want to kick off with our first, and before we proceed to our panelists, I would like to take the opportunity to also introduce Ms. Philadelphia Ngobeni, who will speak on behalf of OWSD. I'm going to hand over to her. Ms. Philadelphia Ngobeni will tell us a bit more about what her work around OWSD. She is a doctoral researcher in civil engineering at the University of Cape Town and specializes in the sustainable industrial wastewater treatment. Philadelphia, if I can ask you to please take us through what the work that you're currently doing.
Good day, everyone. I am honored to join today, not only as an engineer, but also as someone who carries the responsibility of outreach and advocacy for the Organization of Women in Science for the Developing World, and that is the South African chapter. So my story began in a male-dominated workplace, and it has led me to academia and advocacy. But the bigger picture and story today is how organizations such as OWSD keep opening the door wider for the next generation. So OWSD is more than a network. It is a lifeline for women in science and engineers. It represents hope, and that hope is that talent is not wasted simply because of your gender, your geography, and your circumstances. It tells women that they belong and that their contribution matters. So, in developing countries such as South Africa, we know that challenges are greatest and also resources are limited. And including women is not just only fair, it is essential for progress. Women need to be at the heart of creating solutions because we experience this impact on a daily basis. And when they are empowered, they lift communities. So, through my portfolio at the OWSD, which is Outreach and Advocacy, I focus on creating visibility, mentorship, and pathways for young people, particularly young girls, to enter STEM fields. So when I go to schools and communities, I do not just say do engineering. I say own mathematics, own science, because these are stepping stones. Because if we want more women in engineering tomorrow, we must invest in confident and curious learners. You know, I've seen firsthand that when girls meet people like me, for example, when you go to exhibitions or when you go to these communities, something shifts in them. You know, they begin to see themselves differently. And representation is really powerful. But also, opportunity and guidance are what turns this imagination into action. And I always say talent is everywhere, but opportunity is not. And nowhere is that gap more visible in our science and mathematics fields for our high school, our education system. I mean, it is very disheartening that for maths, the POS is 30%. For maths literacy, it's 20%. And by grade 12, it's a bare 30% that makes them go through. I mean, these are not just numbers, they represent a lost potential. Brilliant African children whose futures are limited, not because they lack ability, but because they're not supported, inspired, or challenged to aim higher. So, if we want a generation of African problem solvers, innovators, engineers. We need to start by fixing this foundation. Africa cannot afford mediocrity in the very subject that hold the key to our future. So, because this exposure is not enough, we need to have high expectations, stronger teaching, collective support for maths and science, not just to scrape through, but to excel. So beyond that classroom, OWSD aims to fill those gaps where opportunity is lacking. We want to show young people that their futures are not limited to traditional careers. Engineering, science, technology are all around them. We want to teach them digital literacy, so that access to the global knowledge economy is not just a privilege, but a right. And we want to keep building mentorship networks that prove to young women you are not incapable, you are not less than. You simply need a chance and the resources to shine. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Philadelphia. Wow, that is amazing, the work that you are actually doing. And it's so important that, from all angles that we actually focus on this. And the fact that the outreach programs are where we actually start, and more importantly, the solid foundation that you speak about is what is going to change the narrative and get a bigger uptake of young learners actually embarking on these careers. Well done on that. So thanks for sharing with us. And without much ado, I think we'd like to get into our speakers, our esteemed speakers for today. And we're going to kick off with Mrs. Danai Magugumela, who is going to share with us my journey to engineering leadership. But I've known Danai for many years. Prior to coming on, I was trying to figure out just how long our relationship goes. Just a very brief bio on Danai. She's the founder and managing director of Full Circle Partners, with over 25 years of diverse experience in both public as well as in both private sector as well as state-owned enterprises. She's an accomplished business executive with expertise in the design and construction of highways, roads, and streets, as well as municipal service delivery. Danai holds a Master of Science and a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering. She has served as a council member and EBIT advisory board member at the University of Pretoria, and also served on the boards of SANRAL, the South African Institution of Civil Engineers, and Consulting Engineers, South Africa. So I'd like to welcome Danai to take us through her presentation that's titled My Journey to Engineering Leadership. Over to you, Danai.
Thank you very much, Marlene. And I'd like to say good afternoon to all who have joined. Thank you very much to the organizers from the Academy and from ASSAf. And it's great to be in your company. I'm going to share a few slides just because I know I can digress. So I hope the slideshow is visible.
Not as yet, Danai. Maybe just give it a second or two and it should come through.
Okay. If not, I'll just make sure I did click on share.
Maybe our support team can field your slides.
I'll try again while.
Yes, we have it on. Thank you.
Okay, great. So considering the audience, and well, the audience was not necessarily that easy to understand, but considering the context of the organizers of this webinar, I felt that I am standing in the company of very academic, very accomplished, real engineers, not those generalists like myself. So to assist our discussions today, I thought if I could share snippets of my story as I journeyed to leadership in engineering from a corporate perspective, maybe that will add dimension to the discussions. So thank you in advance for listening. How did it all start for me? I'm just not sure if the sidebar is affecting your view, but I'm not very experienced in these things, but I'm going to try to make it go away. Oh, no, not that. Okay, so basically, especially following Philadelphia's context regarding the girl children who are going to go into STEM and the inclusion we're looking for me, I had, I believe, a very empowering start because my ambition in life is quite simple: to be inspiring, influential, and impactful. So all through my early primary school going years, it was my dream to build up to a life of basically leaving the world better than how I found it. And in my generation, I was born to parents who were like many others. They wanted to break the barriers through their children that they had failed to do in their time due to political situations and where we were back in the 60s and 70s when I was a child. So the way I was going to be impactful and inspiring was to excel in school, become a doctor or some kind of scientist, and basically in the health services field, make sick people well. And as time went on, I grew up coming into my own, no longer necessarily chiming into the narratives that my parents, my siblings supported me with. When I found myself and experienced a significant drought period in the 80s, at that ambitious teenage stage, I decided that I wanted to do more than cure people who are ill, but be more involved in the proaction of food production, where we could provide food security for all and therefore have healthier outcomes. So actually, for me to become an engineer was accidental. As I said before, parental support and encouragement to be curious at the things my mother and my father had not had in their time was to basically be competent at maths and science and then become a doctor. However, to fast forward, I ended up applying to university to study agronomy because now I wanted to differentiate myself and my family, where my sisters had become doctors themselves. And I did get admitted to an agricultural university by the name of Prairie View A&M, where the A is for agriculture and the M is for mechanical. I went to Texas very gratefully on a scholarship. And once I was in the program, to my great surprise, my faculty shut down due to low enrollment. There were other majors that were more popular, such as agricultural engineering, animal husbandry, etc. So soil and crop management were not sexy enough. My faculty was closed down. I had to really arm wrestle with my parents to allow me to turn down an acceptance to medical school and now do this major, and now it's closed. So in a panic, I ran around campus, found something else to do, and civil engineering is what I stumbled upon in the prospectus. And to this day, I'm very passionate about horticulture, food production, food security. However, I have never regretted my civil engineering destination. So this slide just serves to give some chronology in case we have listeners on the call who are maybe on the younger stage of their careers, or maybe they're still students. It was sort of like my academic summary, just I can rattle it off to say, from my completion in high school, where I was a scholarship recipient, I went to Italy did a 2-year program. I was awarded with the International Baccalaureate, and then I applied to universities, which then, fortunately, a full scholarship was extended to me for my residential costs and my academic costs. So off I went to Texas, where I eventually spent 7 years. The first 4 years were spent doing my degree, which became civil engineering. Before graduation, I took a summer holiday experience in a materials testing lab for the Department of Highways. That in the US was a very important thing to do. It was not a requirement, but it helped graduates to stand out, to have some experience. And then in 1991, I graduated cum laude, was very grateful to secure a first job with the Department of Highways, because that summer experience also put me in good stead. This time, my full-time job was to do geometric design of a 12-lane freeway. And 2 years into the job, it was time for me to think about furthering my studies. As I wasn't an American born, being an international student, I needed to use the limited time allowed for me to advance my studies before returning. So I went for my master's program, came out with an MSc. My research was on the use of waste tire rubber in asphalt concrete mixes. And that was at Texas A&M University. So that brought me to my career start in South Africa, where I obtained my professional engineering license in 1998. Around this period is really where life shaped me, quite different from, there's the expression that says life is what happens when we're making other plans. I feel like my story is quite a sum total of serendipity, the things that came in my path that I might not have known or even planned for. So the design in consulting engineering firms was what I did for a solid 5 years or so. And then I decided to make a career change, not really career change, but a job change, because I was an expectant mother, expecting my second child, and the work-life balance issues were really, really real. And, I feel perhaps some of my colleagues closer to my age will relate to the fact that before digital ways of working, before virtual hybrid work, it was quite a thing for a busy mother and wife to be physically present in the office, physically present on the highway, physically present, picking up at creche. And when I was expecting the second child, I just needed to be in an environment that was a little less breathless than consulting engineering, because consulting engineering entails response to calls for proposals in order to be continually on a work-seeking treadmill. So that's why this slide shows that I left my job in consulting and I became a project manager in a unit called the Municipal Infrastructure Investment Unit. And that is where my immersion in municipal service delivery was quite strong. To my
Denai,
surprise,
sorry, I just wanted to interject there. Those slides are not necessarily moving if you're on another slide. So just to reassure the participants that we would actually be sending them a copy of these slides.
Thank you. Okay. Apologies for that. I hope it's corrected now, maybe, but okay. In fact, when I prepared the slides, it was mostly for the fact that if somebody asked for something to be provided, I would have it. So it's okay. I'll carry on. So where I was a project manager managing a grant program for municipalities to go into public-private partnerships because their balance sheets were insufficient to really extend service delivery in a way that achieves the whole balance, leveling of the playing fields. We had formerly Black-dominated townships who didn't have a service level that the leafy suburbs did. And so in order to provide for all, conditional grants were an important part of the municipal budget. So as I went along with this enjoyable project manager job, which also gave me a lot more work-life balance, my CEO resigned, and it was a bit of a premature exit relative to her contract, and the board asked project managers to interview for her job, and I happened to be the successful candidate, so I became the CEO of the unit. That, I think, was a defining moment, which then led to me being headhunted back into corporate, back into a consulting engineering firm by the name of BKS. It was a male-dominated, male-founded, and very Afrikaans culture firm that wanted to transform, and having a Black female come in at the top showed the seriousness. So I enjoyed 6 good years at BKS in leadership. Since then, the whole time I was true to the professional registration, and together with good colleagues in the industry like Malini and others, we would serve as captains of the industry. For now, I have slides, which I'm not sure if you're seeing them or not, but this was really just a slide intended for those who might still be grappling with navigating the consulting space in particular, different from navigating academic careers, different from navigating in construction. So because that's where I come from, I basically wanted to say, South Africa is doing very well, in my opinion, on support and incentives for young professionals, irrespective of the gender. The bursaries are available. There are student chapters of a range of associations. And I think there's been quite a good trend of young professionals being a category that matters and is brought along to say, it's not enough that we have graduates. We also need to retain professionals. We also need to groom future leaders. And of course, it's all important to continue to do what many of us women do, which is doing the mentoring and coaching, the role modeling outside the office, out across companies, across employment, in our private spaces. We need to continue to show up, and that is something I've been glad to do. And then I just have a fast slide of a couple of logos. This is just a real drop in the ocean of industry bodies that I believe if professionals in engineering are ambitious and want to enjoy the immersion, the inclusion, it is really an important thing to take interest in how the industry is actually shaped, how it's regulated, how it is supported in terms of advocacy, and it helps to stay abreast of what are the issues. I didn't want to leave out ASSAf. ASSAf is the all-important career progression for us. I think it's really a loss if an engineer goes all the way to qualifying and then does not get recognized as a registered engineer with the council. So it's my duty to influence people to get the professional registration in various categories. And then to round off so that I allow more time for our discussions, in case anyone wanted to dwell on the setbacks that we're facing, I'm going to just rattle them off because we could be here all day. But the gender bias is still a widespread thing. I'm a mother of 2 young men in their 20s. So I don't have experience in terms of nurturing my own girl child, but I certainly know that we're all guilty of gender bias. There's a way of what we do with the boys is different from what we do with the girls, and I think it has impact on how included or not the girl child feels by the time they come out of high school in the STEM careers. The aspects of artisanal work that merge with engineering, there's the engineering design, there's construction supervision, but there's also a whole host of artisanal work related to the job of an engineer. So the aspects, like with my parents, when I chose civil engineering, my father's greatest worry was that I was going to be on a railroad track all day long. As far as he knew, that's what civil engineers do. They lay sleeper on the ground, stone with a pick, and then they go home. So we need to demystify what engineering truly entails. We also have self-sabotage that resides within women. Often we are deciding that we are not good enough. We have a perceived need that we have to be twice as good. And in many instances, the burnout then comes because we are pushing twice as hard as our colleagues. The family planning, the family responsibility issue is undoubtedly, is arguably completely a bigger deal. I mean, think of conception. We have to plan. If we're going to go to site, we have to think about, so when can we actually be ready to be in a conception, in a childbearing moment, etc., and how is it all going to work out? And lastly, how are our male managers equipped? Often they are under-equipped to handle the challenges we have of the roles we carry at home and how we have to rush at the drop of a phone call, etc. And then secondly and lastly, with the female leadership, we often have their understanding of what we go through, but sometimes the intentions are more self-preserving. So a female manager might surprisingly neglect to lift fellow women, surprisingly neglect to be a sponsor and call the names to promote us in rooms that we're not in. I won't dwell on this one particular slide because I know it will take time, but I wanted to say, for many people, the question is, for many young engineers, the question is, I know I want to end up in management, so I need to do an MBA. That's not a bad idea. In my case, it wasn't the path taken. But there's also a master's in engineering management. And this particular caption was just something I drew from the American Society of Mechanical Engineers that was assisting to articulate the difference between engineering management degree versus an MBA. So in short, engineering management is sort of closer to advancement on the technical track into a specialist role within engineering consulting, engineering construction, academic engineering, but it brings in a flair of business training, different from the MBA that does what many engineers are looking for, which is opportunity to pivot out into other things like investment banking or development.
I could get you to carry on without interruptions, but I'm being mindful, and I'm sure that our participants are going to post a lot of questions in the chat group, and we can field them a bit later on. But I just want to say thank you so much for sharing your leadership journey, and thank you for those golden nuggets that you've shared with us as well. And I must admit that, I think every woman needs a rock to lean on from time to time in this journey as well. And I would like to, publicly acknowledge that Danai has been one of those individuals when you have that down moment that you need to just pick up the phone and call and then sort of navigate the space on this leadership journey. So thank you for the support that you've offered me as well, Danai, in this leadership
Thank you, Malini.
journey that I've gone through as well.
Likewise.
So I want to just thank you, Janai. I want to just go on to our next speaker. We're a bit behind, but I'm sure we'd catch up as we move along. And I'd like to formally introduce you to our next speaker, Dr. Gisela Kaiser. She's the VP of Water Globe Consultants, LLC. And just a very brief synopsis on Dr. Kaiser. She's a professional civil engineer with over 30 years experience in leadership, development, and management across sectors, including local government, industrial development, higher education, consulting, and retail. With more than a decade of executive level experience, she was responsible for strategy development and leadership in dynamic, complex, and high pressure organizations. Her passion lies in transformation for a sustainable future, one that is integrated and equitable, where complex solutions benefit all stakeholders, and where development leads to greater social justice, equality, and environmental stewardship. So I'd like to formally welcome Dr. Kaiser to give us her words of wisdom around this particular subject. Over to you, Gisela.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Marlene, can you see my slide?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, and please just alert me if it doesn't advance. I've only got 8 slides, but I'd quite like for them to show. You asked what the theme of my talk would be, and I was a little bit dumbstruck, but it makes me feel quite old that since I went to varsity, I've now been in engineering for 38 years. So I made that the theme of my talk. As I move to the next slide, if you can please just indicate for me.
Yes, it has. It's moving.
Great.
Gisela.
Thank you. Yes. So there are no graphs or tables in my slides and not a lot of text. It's all generally pictures, because it's nice to occasionally talk about things that are technical and close to my heart, but not engineering related. So these days, I think there's so many more choices of career. I did not, as a child, I was very shy, and I didn't really think that I would be able to do anything much in the world, or I didn't aspire to it. But I had a strong mom who always, she didn't have the opportunities back in the 40s and 50s when she was a child. So I guess that shapes us. And then my dad passed away when I was in my first year of high school. So I was a third of 3 daughters, and I guess most parents just kind of hope for daughters and sons. But as I also came out as a girl, I used to help my dad with handiwork and so on. So after he passed away, I took over that job and looked after drilling holes and generally, doing the more manly things around the house. And then, I was a bit of a rebel at school, and I thought, coming from a conservative Afrikaans background, I then applied to Wits to go and study engineering. And when the principal of my school called me in and told me off, because, I'm supposed to be barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen, and what am I going to a communist organization such as Wits, I think I knew that I was on the right track and doing the right thing. So these days there are a lot of different career choices. I mean, I am yet to follow an influencer. I cannot believe that there are things that like influencers that now earn a lot of money, a lot more money than I do. So there are threats and opportunities that social media have given us, and it's in the news all the time at the moment how AI is going to transform us. So choosing a career in engineering, at this point, I can't see that you can really go wrong with it, even though it is said that AI will not have as much of an influence on the humanities, perhaps, as long as we still cherish creativity and so on. But that's really can be found in everything. But what inspired me to end up in a career in engineering, it wasn't that I had a particularly inquisitive mind. It was a bit like Denai, I stumbled upon it, and it sounded like a good, solid thing to do. And I must admit that I haven't regretted it. So there are still very many obstacles that women encounter, and our society has developed in the way of its working, probably mostly from the First World War and then the Second World War. So I just thought I should show you a couple of pictures that came from advertisements in the 40s, 50s, and 60s that, this is what shaped the world as we know it. The chef does everything but cook. That's what wives are for. And she'll be happy if you give her a Hoover for Christmas. And this is one of my favorites. Wives, look at this ad carefully. Circle the items you want for Christmas. Show it to your husband. If he doesn't go to the store immediately, cry a little. Not a lot, just a little. He'll go. You know, so that's really the environment that we were shaped in. And while things have changed, I think our societal conditioning and the internalized misogyny is still strong. And I think both of the previous speakers mentioned this as well. And it's unsurprising because this is the way that we've evolved, and it takes conscious action and active working against to change this. But it's really not necessary that we perpetuate these styles still in 2025. So in my career, I've certainly witnessed much gender bias. You know, in the first couple of years, I graduated in 1990. So in the first couple of years, if I was in a meeting, people assumed that I was there to bring coffee or take notes or something. So it took quite a while for the world to change and accept that there are some engineers out there. And I just looked up on the internet that approximately in South Africa, we're graduating about 13,000 engineers a year, which actually sound like a lot, of which 28% are female, which is higher than the world average of about 20%. But this is a great improvement. When I was in my first year, there were 3 of us girls out of a class of 80, and we graduated, those 3 same of us, but the class had shrunk to just 25. So I think there are a lot more graduates now, but the challenge is to keep women in engineering. Because I graduated when I did, it seems that so many of my classmates left engineering. And I think there are various reasons for it, because engineers tend to ease quite well into other jobs and forms as well. But it really done, I think Denai spoke a lot about family and the difficulties that we tend to experience when you try to have it all. So at the moment, I really think that COVID, apart from being a real curse on our society, it also offered us amazing opportunities, because now we've got Teams and Zoom. And of course, there's also a different aspect to it that you can never switch off, because you don't anymore have travel time in between meetings. You can just go from one meeting into the next. And I do not actually know how people with children at school managed during COVID to teach their children, to homeschool their children, make sure that everything was right with school and do their jobs. But it's an amazing opportunity to allow flexibility. Most of the client bodies that I'm still working with are doing a lot of hybrid work, which suits me really well, because I work with all the metros, and to travel is just a waste of resources and a waste of time. So to be able to have Teams meetings, absolutely amazing. But there are other things that very much chase women out of engineering, and it often is sexism, and sexism can be blatant, or it can be very subtle as well. People, in my experience, since I started working, most men in management, I guess, don't really value the diversity, the benefits that diversity offers, both in genders, in races, in age ranges, and everything. So most employers that I have seen, witnessed, and worked for are not super efficient. So, you know, you can generally afford to include 1 or 2 people, be they youth, be they a different race, a different gender, just to increase the diversity in a room, because you certainly do get better outcomes if you've got a diverse mindset within a team. So to make sure that there's representativity, I feel old and jaded, so I don't really particularly notice when I'm the only woman in a room full of men, but I know other people do, and it intimidates. So where one can, just naturally and without it being a big thing, encourage that. and also encourage people to participate. You can see when you're in a meeting who's too shy to say something, who's uncertain, just to nudge them to, you know, make sure that everybody's included. And I think flexible work conditions, and that's really what Teams does. I'm working with an engineer that works at a consultant in Pretoria, and she manages to have so many meetings and do so much work in her car while she's waiting for her sons who play soccer, etc. So that wasn't available when I was working in an office as a full-time person and had children. So there's always this compromise that you have to make. I remember when I started a job at Kuche in the Eastern Cape that I specifically juggled and managed because my children were, I think, 2 and 4 at the time. And I juggled and I was texting to make sure that my children are looked after, fetched from where they were, supper was being made, etc. And I got home at 6 o'clock in the evening. I had to leave the meeting. The meeting was still going on. Again, in the morning, great rush to get children at school and everything, myself looking decent and get to the office. And so much had happened since I left work the night before at 6 and 8 o'clock in the morning. So I was excluded just because the men were, you know, they were busy and important and they could stay at the office and carry on with their meetings while other people were looking after everything else. So that to me was quite an eye-opener that made me very aware of it. And I realized that getting to a management position, you are very fortunate. Generally, if you have a female PA, she doesn't have the luxury to be able to juggle her work so that she can go and watch a soccer match. So it really still is a challenge. And I'm talking way too much. From a diversity viewpoint, I just think that it really adds value. I was married to an engineer, and for the first few years in my career, I tried to be an engineer like him. I failed miserably. Then when I realized that I can be an engineer in my own right and follow my own thought process and just be who I was, I added so much more value, because it really helps when people are authentic, bringing their whole self to work, not just some person that feels that they have to slam their fist on the boardroom table so that people would respect them, but somebody that is a whole person and that cares. You know, if we need anything in this world, we need kindness and caring. So my biggest challenge was being in Cape Town when I was appointed as ED for utility services, where I had about 10,000 staff members and a budget of back then about 20 billion. And if that wasn't hard enough in the political turmoil, we had the record-breaking drought. So that was probably the biggest challenge and the most formative challenge. And the fact that I survived that, I still think is a bit of a miracle. I think that generally in situations like that, you know, something suffers if you have to give it your absolute all. So I didn't have a life outside work. It was just work, 100% of the time. And my children were in high school and they kind of had to just do what they were supposed to do, because it was really, with the public being an outcry that we're running out of water and the politicians very upset about everything, it was a challenge. What was for me great about that is to be able to lead my staff and for them to follow me and to go the extra mile, because we were a part of the team. I went toilet cleaning in many informal areas in Cape Town. It was really seeing the underbelly of society and empathizing with my staff as well. You know, that we're doing really, really hard jobs and the public was so against them. So that was probably the most satisfying career aspect of that. I was also fortunate that I could take some time to write a book about the experience, and it was a really cathartic experience to write a book. And I'm proud of the fact that I didn't write it as a bestseller. I didn't make big all the people who did wrong and who made bad choices and bad decisions, but it's just an honest reflection of what really happened in the drought and how we got out of it. So that was really a rewarding part of my career. Significant challenges, there are a lot of those. What strikes me often when I meet with young female engineers is that there's a lot of anger. And I guess because I was raised in a time when women were definitely the underdogs, I learned to pick my fights. So I would probably let a lot wash over me and address it not in a confrontational way, but try to get my message across at another time to people who I thought were being unfair and sexist or not treating me fairly. And generally in my life, that has actually worked out. I think what also women tend to do is to put themselves in a box and to be as brave as you can be. Sometimes you can't do everything, but just be as brave as you can be. And I see Melani's back, so I'd better finish. The one thing I want to say about engineering, because at various times in my career, I've wondered, if a young woman asks for my advice on whether to become an engineer, would I really want them to go through the incredibly tough times that I've gone through? I can't really make a judgment on that, but the one thing I want to say is that engineering teaches you a way of thinking, a way of being practical and approaching life that I haven't seen any other degree do. So just for that reason, I would suggest yes, absolutely. Because if you want to change course and go into whatever else, it's a very sound grounding. But hopefully you will fall in love with the diversity of engineering and stay there. And then, yeah, I think just on Philadelphia's point, we need women engineers because we're in 2025. The world is really in trouble and we have to act now. So we can't just exclude half the people on this planet. Engineers need women. We need to bring together better solutions to face a better future. Thank you very much, Melanie.
Thank you, Gisela. Those 38 years coming through very strongly and lots of wisdom there and lots of information to share with the audience. So thank you for that. And we'll dig a bit deeper with our Q&A session. I'm sure that you have some incredible solutions to some of the challenges that the women are facing currently. So we'll delve a bit deeper. So I'd like to now at this point welcome our next panelist, Ms. Arinal Nchevulana. Arinal is a registered professional engineer with the Engineering Council of South Africa, and she's currently serving as a senior mechanical engineer and office manager. She holds a BSc in mechanical engineering from the University of Cape Town, a BCom in financial management from UNISA, and is currently pursuing a master's in engineering through UNISA. She has over 15 years of experience in the engineering field, and she is passionate about developing creative solutions, driving project execution, and leading high-performing teams. I'd like to call Arinal to provide us with insight into her career and how she's progressed over the years. Arinal, can I hand over to you, please?
Thank you so much, Ms. Melanie. Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, as she has said, my name is Arinal Nchevulana. I'm a senior mechanical engineer. I'm a woman and I'm proud to be a woman, and I'm proud of the journey that I have faced because it has shaped me to be where I am today, and also to be a woman that I am, and apart from that, to be an engineer that I am. I don't have anything to project, but I just wanted to tell a bit of my story and also to come up with what I have seen as I'm growing, and also the challenges in the engineering world and how I have overcome some of those challenges. Mechanical engineering degree was not my first choice. Actually, when I was growing up, I grew up with a mother and a father that were so creative, but they never went far with schooling. So when my father was in Johannesburg working, we were at home in Limpopo with our mother. We are 7 in my family. So I'm number 5 and 6. Number 5 and 6, it means that we are twins. So yeah, 5 and 6, I might be 5, I might be 6, so we are twins. So in order for our mom to add on the food on the table while my father is away, she used to do traditional mat. So I used to look at her and check, like, how did she come up with this? Because she never went to school and nobody has taught her something. So we used to use tin cans, and then we will put in the sand in it and put a rope, put a plank, and then after that we'll continue to sew the traditional mat. So after that, we'll walk around selling them. And then after that, she taught us to do that. Then I realized that even though my parents never went to school, they were creative somehow. So I started to fall in love with creating things, like creating things, and then see the whole product come to pass, and then looking at the product, designing and creating different ways of traditional mat in between. So after that, through our career guidance, we were told about engineering and how to become a pilot. And I said, I want to become one. I want to become a pilot. When I reached grade 11, and I realized that through the career guidance, pilot or air hostess or whichever way, it comes with a height and everything. And I realized because I'm too tall, it's a joke, I'm short. Then I realized that I will go through the mechanical degree. So I applied in Cape Town, went through the mechanical degree, but what I have seen as I was still studying at varsity, it's the number of females versus the number of males in a class. It never surprised me because we were really few. And the number that we started with, as compared to the number that graduated, it was way less than the number that we have started. Although it went that far, it never stopped me to continue with my mechanical engineering degree. There are times that the studies were very difficult, including the finances, including maybe part of poverty and the struggles in the female. It was tough, but I find a way of encouraging myself, because I realized that once you love something, you have to do whatever it takes to climb the ladder from one ladder to another in order to arrive somewhere. So entering the working world, what I have learned so much in the working world is we as females, like everyone else, we need to be mentored fully by a female who is already ahead of us, because we have challenges, as the last speakers have spoken, challenges of family, getting married, or even not getting married, falling pregnant, all these 9 months of carrying a child. It limits us also in performing our engineering work, because we have to move from site to site. We have to spend more hours designing. We have to do site assessment, be on the road. So when you are pregnant, it comes to a point of reducing some work as the pregnancy progress, and then trying your best to stay in the office. But when you stay in the office also, your work on site, it's also going to be lacking. So throughout my career, I was led by the male engineers or supervisors. Some of them couldn't understand how to deal with female engineer. Some of them, it was difficult for them to be able to accept female engineers with all the responsibilities of what comes in, where we will be able to report that I have to rush home, my child is not feeling well. today I'm not coming. My child is it's having flu. The condition is not well. I don't want to go to work. I want to just monitor the temperature, the fever, and everything. But through the passion and what you believe in and what you want to be as an engineer, you have to push. Sometimes you will be forced to work like double than the male engineers, the way they are working. So you have to push all the way. So the things that have made me survive all along is I took my gender outside of my mind and told myself that I'm an engineer, not because of being a gender or a female or a male, but I am an engineer and I have to put myself in a pot where there are some engineers. And I told myself that what other males are doing, I can also do it. But I'm not ashamed to be a female engineer. In whatever that comes, when I'm pregnant, I'm proud to be pregnant and I'm proud to be a female engineer, but I'm an engineer and I will work in whatever that I have to do. And I never come to a point of hitting myself against the wall or blaming the pregnancy or the family. Although there was sometimes that I struggle with my male supervisor of how do I approach this, because now I need to slow down. Now I need to tell my supervisor that I will stop to go to site because my days of maternity are getting closer. But at the end of the day, I realized that when my passion is in the engineering world and I'm there to make a change, I need to work as an engineer. Whatever challenges, they will not make me to deviate from the road of becoming the best engineer. And whatever challenges that I will be sitting down with the males, I got a lot of chance of traveling with males up and down to go to site. And I was never afraid to become dirty, because engineering, it's an engineering world where sometimes you can be dirty. Sometimes you will be forced not to have a manicure and then become creative. Hold on machines. Sometimes it's a dusty construction world where you have to enter wearing all the safety boots and everything. But it never stopped me to become who I am as a male mechanical engineer. The other thing that I have found myself in is through the challenges to be a female engineer, the family, and all those, I have found myself in continue to equip myself with technology, with studying, and with design courses and everything. But what I have seen in most firms or the engineering world, when females are done with studies and they are entering the working world, it's very challenging when you don't have a mentor, a mentor to look after you. You have to be out there. You have to connect. You have to use these social media platforms like LinkedIn, and all the other platforms that are there in South Africa that are helping all the engineering world or STEM. So you need to find people who are forward, who are far forward from your a position where you are as an engineer. You need to isolate, to socialize with those people. Whenever you have a challenge as a new female engineer who is entering the world of engineering, communicate with those people, tell them your challenges, because those people are ready to lead you and are ready to give you something that is better and that will encourage you to continue with the journey as a female engineer. There was a time, last time when I was in my previous work, that Sasol, I think it was presenting women in engineering, and I went to attend. I used to think that there was no help with females who can help me to manage my career as an engineer. But when I arrived there and I see chemical engineer, mechanical engineer, electrical females, I realized that this world, you can search and you can find something. And when you find something, when you have passion to move ladders and to move up. You can do better with those that are in front of you and mentoring. Thank you so much. I see Miss Melanie is already there. Thank you so much for the wonderful opportunity. And I'm proud and I'm happy that I'm here today to tell a story and to tell those that are planning to become female engineer that it's doable. Challenges are there, but let's not run away from challenges. Let's do our best, because I can see today I'm surrounded with the female engineers and they're telling their stories. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Arinal, for sharing with us. That was incredible. And I like the fact that you also, framed the different sort of periods in one's life and the different kind of challenges that one would tend to experience. So I'm going to now ask the panelists to kindly put on their videos and their microphones, and we're going to now start fielding questions to you. I am going to start fielding questions to you. So if you can kindly join me in this virtual coffee side chat or discussion, and if you can please put your videos on. Denai, I'm not sure if you're able to. Arinal, are you able to? Yeah, perfect. Thank you, ladies. So I'm going to field some questions to you, and I'm going to frame them probably slightly different, given what you've shared with us over the last period. So maybe we should kick off with Ari now, because we've just come out of sharing with us. And I would like to maybe, if you can possibly share with us any notable example in where you've witnessed gender bias or stereotypes in engineering teams or workplaces. Can you possibly maybe expand on it a bit to let us know, how did you navigate these challenges? Is there something that stood out where you've witnessed gender bias or stereotypes?
Thank you, Miss Malani. That experience, it's very painful when it happens. And I believe, one for all, it's about your skill and what you know better. Don't look down on yourself. And sometimes there are some things that they don't need your reaction. They just need you to produce, to be better, to be an engineer you are supposed to be. It will happen. And we are shaping a wonderful generation of having females, but it's happening very slow. And when you enter, even in industry, it's very difficult to find 2 or 3 females in the engineers. You are always the first one or the last one in. And apart from the males, believe me, as a woman, you must be proud of yourself. You are going to be pregnant if you fell pregnant, and there is nothing we can do. And when you are pregnant, you are going to slow down. And whatever that can happen, a male engineer can surpass you during that period. And on that matter, there is nothing we can do, but your passion and who you are and what you believe in. And when you've got goals of where you are going, it will make you stand still.
Thanks for that. Thanks for that share, Arinal. Gisela, maybe coming to you next, and the experience that you have, having worked in this environment for so many years, and also leading, large teams under some trying periods. You led some large teams. In what ways do you feel your perspective as a woman contributes uniquely to engineering projects or problem solving?
Yeah, I think I touched on it a little bit. I mean, I think the last thing that the world needs is more, apologies to all the men in the audience, but to all like strong men that feel that their masculinity is affected by them not being in power. you know, if you look at the current world leaders, a lot of them are narcissistic, really strong men that feel that you can only get ahead by stepping on others. And I think that we just naturally, or maybe not all women, but you know, it's very difficult to be a mom and have children and not have compassion and not see that people behave in a certain way because they're hurting, for example. So the sensitivity and the holistic outlook, I think, is very important in what we have to offer the world and in the workplace. At the end of the day, everybody is still, you know, human beings, but so often the profit motive or winning seems to be all important. And I think it is really nice to be in a position in a career that you've actually got respect of people to be able to show this. And I feel that it's our responsibility to show this to all the audiences that we interact with, to make sure that they understand it's not necessary to keep a facade up that you are perfect and, you know, you're in charge and you're in power and you are always right. So I think that softer side just leads to more openness, better solutions, more creativity.
Thanks, Gisela. That humility is certainly a strong trait amongst females, and I concur with you on that. Denai, Nick, can I move on to you? And this is something that I've been grappling with, you know, probably having been in the industry for as long as you have. So I'm going to field you with this question. How have attitudes towards women engineers evolved since you began your career? And more importantly, are younger generations experiencing a different environment?
Thank you, Malini. Yeah, you and I have come along in the same period, and I have seen a transition in that in South Africa, particularly, I can say our economy has done a lot for employment equity, making sure we're there and making sure that it's not window dressing, it's not tokenism, that we actually participate in management roles, etc. So in that regard, I think it's been an easier, it appears to me that the entry into the field, literally and figuratively, is becoming easier. It's less peculiar to see a woman on site in hard hat, or a woman doing the client relations on the site or in the office, in the boardroom. Yeah, but I can't remember the second half of your question.
Do you think that it's different for the younger generation of females that are coming through? Do you think that
I do. I see, you know, the last formal job I had, I needed to mentor women who were much, much younger than myself. So they were going through decisions on marriage, decisions on starting a family. And the more things change, the more they stay the same in some ways, because although the rules do not shut them out, some of what has been touched on, like Arinao's comments about still feeling left alone, still feeling missing the mentors that they would like to have, that is some truth that doesn't just go away. Yeah, so
thanks,
I think,
Denai. I think you've explored that in some depth. Leading on from that, what do the panelists feel? And I'm posing this question to all of you. What do you believe are strategies that women engineers can use to support each other in fostering a collaborative and inclusive engineering community? Because if we are to succeed, obviously we need to start looking at what strategies one could put in place. In your opinion, who wants to go first? Very brief. There's something like top of mind from a strategy perspective. I don't think we're going to be able to
Miss
unpack
Malani, I
all,
think I
but
will go. I will
sure.
go first.
Go.
I think also what the company must put also in place is to encourage the female engineers to be out there. Like when you are a female engineer, don't rely on your company as it is, but rely on all this organization of women that is out there. Also, in yourself, immediately when you climb a small ladder, start to mentor. I have realized that we've got a very big gap from secondary school to university of mentoring girls. And also there is another big gap that is still open from the varsity when they start to enter the working world. We are managing to produce engineers from the varsity and also from the technikon, but we cannot sustain the female engineers at all. I feel like we cannot sustain them. How? But I believe that the challenges that the females are getting into the environment of male-dominated career, it's something that it needs mentorship all through.
Okay, so you're talking about mentorship then, now. Gisela,
Yes.
can you maybe add on to that? What strategies we are to succeed? What strategies do you believe should be implemented?
Yes, I think that mentorship is an important aspect. I think the mentors I had, I didn't even know that they were mentors yet. I wasn't, it wasn't a thing back then, or that I was aware of.
Obviously, at the time that you started, Gisela, did you have any notable female mentors that you can?
I didn't at all. I mean, I think that for me, the one joy of that was that there wasn't I didn't have to fit into a dress code. So I was never in a three-piece suit. I could basically get away with wearing what I wanted to, but that just on the light side. I think that mentorship is important. It's a thing that I don't think any of our organizations have really managed to get 100% right, that you can just sign up for a mentor, or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe SAAE is doing quite a lot about the mentorship thing. But moreover, the kind of policies, the flexibility without it being that men might see it as unfair because women get flexibility in their working time. I think that type of approach to a workplace, that there are flexible working hours, because it's really about, sometimes you need to be in a certain place for a meeting, but as long as you get your work done, it shouldn't really matter where you do it, that we just become more flexible and build more a team approach to it. And perhaps that would be a key if you are in a workplace. Make sure that you've got a diverse team to work together, but that they can work in a flexible way. And I do think that the world has changed and become more open and more outspoken. There are many places where it might be not embraced and laughed at. There's a whole culture against wokeism. But there are perhaps a lot more people now like us in the workplace that can address that and make sure that change, that people become respectful of the differences and provide policies that make it more easy to be a professional in the workplace. And that will include something like mentorship programs.
Thanks, Gisela. Danai, can I lead on to you? We've always been having these serious discussions about policies. What sort of policy reforms do you think should be considered to create the kind of enabling environment or have empathy with regards to female engineers in the workplace?
Well, I can't think of policy further to what we have in terms of the laws that put pressure on corporates to have the right ratios. But I think beyond policy, we can have programs. In other words, companies, when they're looking at the total talent, looking at talent in its totality, meaning what does our future look like? Who are the people who are going to go up the succession path? Related to that, I think it's very helpful to have a requirement to participate in industry advocacy. So like you and I have done, Malini, over many, many years, we've stepped outside of the walls of our employers to contribute in the industry bodies. And this has benefits for the individual, whilst it has benefits from the company that is represented. So I would really, if I'm working with smaller enterprises, mentoring smaller businesses who feel they don't have enough time for anything other than just putting out their projects, I always advocate that their staff need to be getting out of the walls more intently, and the company should benefit because they fly the flag of their companies when they are in industry issues. And then over time, that then makes us more mainstream, doesn't it? Where our contributions to thought leadership then matter, and people stop and they listen, and that in future then grows the succession for generations to come.
So you're almost saying, it's more about putting yourself out there and contributing in some form or other that's meaningful to industry and to sort of be the role model that somebody else needs, probably.
Yes, exactly.
Wonderful. I tend to concur with that. What role do you believe, and I'm looking at some of the questions that are also that have been posted on the chat group. What role do you believe universities or professional councils and industry play in ensuring gender equality within engineering space?
Well,
is there a role that they can play? Sorry, Danai, you want to go?
Oh, yes, thank you. I was going to say a webinar such as this one is the kind of thing that should happen perhaps even outside of, say, Women's Month. I think we should not underestimate the long-term value that can result from bodies that we don't see every day. If we can see the executive support and executive commitment from leadership of industry bodies, it then gets our pipeline believing in the fact that when we are doing these things, we meet people. First of all, this is a perfect platform on which we get to know each other. We get to have just a bit of time to unpack what might be rattled off on a LinkedIn page, but without the face-to-face or a closer contact, we might not find people to be approachable. So yeah, I think we rely on these type of platforms to put the
Thanks,
word.
Danai. I wanna quickly deal with two very interesting questions that have been posted on the Q&A. It's Aisha who says that she's an electrical engineer with 22 years of experience, and is putting up her hand to be mentoring young females. She says that she's reached out to a group called Women's Engineering Network, and offering her experience to mentor and guide. So I trust that, Aisha, through this platform, there might be individuals that will be connecting with you, because with 22 years of experience, I'm sure there's a lot that you can actually do and support other young females in their career growth. So she's posted on the Q&A So it's great that you're putting up your hand. But I'd like to dwell on Rudzani's question that deals specifically with stats that show that there are that women are less likely than men to receive promotions or pay increases, even when they actively request them. Can our panelists maybe, this is one particular matter that's always been at the forefront. Are there still gender pay gaps? Are they compromised when we talk about promotions? Is it a real situation? So maybe if the panelists can comment on that particular point, because it's Gisela, can I maybe hand over to you?
Yeah, thank you. So I think that in South Africa, probably in the public sector, that has been closed because, well, in a municipal environment, you know, you're on a task grade and whatever post you're in, you get exactly the same as your peers. So probably in South Africa, we're a little bit ahead of the rest of the world in the public sector. I think in the private sector, it is still a thing because it's like that inherent gender bias that people would not necessarily admit to, but that they kind of not quite sure, will she fall pregnant and leave and go and have a baby? Just how loyal is she and so on. And until we get over that, it will be a problem. So it's very heartening to see many kind of consulting startups by female engineers that clearly are breaking those barriers. In my own career, when I experienced what I thought was unfairness, I would be less loyal and I would leave. So it's kind of by backing yourself. And that's just the reality, unfortunately, that often, and both men and women suffer this. If you're in a job for a long time, you tend to be taken for granted and somebody else is employed and they get paid more than you, whereas you've been working your butt off for this firm now for a long time. So sometimes you have to be brave and leave. And I think that that's also something that I would encourage young engineers to do, because there are so many different aspects to engineering. And my experience between being a consultant, being on site and working for a contractor, and being a client, those are so different. And I think different people find their niches in different places. So
Are you suggesting move around till you find your niche and
I
where your
think
passion
so.
lies?
Yeah, I would suggest
Thanks,
that.
Bella. Denai, and maybe to all the panelists, if you were to advise this particular group, what advice or what words would you leave them with, given the fact that, we're moving into an environment where technology is playing a key factor? The question is not necessarily phrased on if looking back historically, and I'm actually asking you to be a bit more futuristic in how this industry is evolving, given your experience, etc. What advice would you give them? What would you ask them to possibly focus on, despite where they're sitting in their career or with whom, whether it's public or private? Arinal, can I start with you? Just a short feedback. What advice would you give the women?
I will say, women in engineering, you are a woman, nothing will change. And don't worry about the changes that you go on. The most important thing is to build yourself. Just build yourself, study hard, move the ladders. If you are staying in a place where they don't appreciate and they don't see you, don't be afraid to move around. Go and knock in different doors, and you will find suddenly you will fall into a place where they will recognize. The private world, also consulting world, it's still lacking a lot when it comes to women uplifting. But I have seen that the public sector is doing well in uplifting females. So never be afraid to knock different doors. You will never know which one will open. And academically and technology-wise, continue to upgrade yourself, and then you will see, once you build yourself, you will never be afraid of challenges.
Thank you, Arinal. Denai, some words of wisdom from you, having been in the industry and occupied many leadership roles.
I'd just like to suggest that professionals really owe it to themselves to make a contribution. So when I say make a contribution, I mean, don't just wake up in the morning, go to work, do your hours, jump in your car, go back home. I think in my experience in corporate has been that those who can be noticed by leadership in the business to be progressive, those who, if it's about climate adaptation, and that's a new buzz, or it's sustainable mobility, that's a new buzz, or it's about building information modeling, a new buzz, you need to be the face of growth and change. Even if it's just reading articles, being able to be heard at tea time or with the bosses about your interest and your knowledge that's growing in a space makes us now stand out. That's what I recommend for women, is to not just prepare to be having the struggles, but prepare to stand out with some contribution that sets you apart.
So you're saying use your emotional intelligence, which you inherently have, to be able to move that dial. Wonderful. Gisela, from your side?
Yeah, I think I agree with Arina, but yeah, you need to stay on top of the game and make sure that you know the new developments and build your knowledge and make yourself a stronger engineer and in a stronger position. And with deny that, hard work is a given. You can't just pull half your weight and expect to change the world. You need to do more. But then to raise your voice and I find that the world tends to put things in boxes and they solve problems one by one. And in that way, they often create unintended consequences. And I think generally women, we're used to dealing with the complexity of having to find time to buy groceries and plan supper and do the children and get dressed and look the part and study and do everything. So I think we're just kind of more used to juggling. So that integration is really what we need in our solutions, and to consider humanity as well. Sometimes it's quite surprising for me now to still be with kind of clients that are so single-minded and they just look after one little bit of the puzzle and they're not really worried about the rest. And I think that there is where we can really, really make a difference. And you can do so from a young age, even if you don't want to put up your hand in front of the whole meeting. Go and lobby separate people afterwards, because you are probably right. There is a better way of doing most things that engineers are trying to solve.
Thank you so much, Gisela, for those words of wisdom. I want to now take the opportunity to hand over to Professor Celeste Viljoen. She's the Vice Dean of Stellenbosch University, and she's a professor of structural engineering at the university. She's also a registered PR Eng with background in bridge design. She's going to provide us a quick wrap-up of the events before we officially close. Celeste, can I hand over to you, please?
Thank you so much, Melanie. Much appreciated. So, colleagues, I'm just going to quickly summarize the broad brushstrokes of the afternoon, and then close with a few remarks of my own. So, well, Melanie actually started the whole conversation and mentioned, how low the representation of women is in the engineering sector at 16%. So maybe let me just start off with a little bit of hope. She said I'm the Vice Dean teaching for the Faculty of Engineering, not the whole university. But last year we took in 38% females into our engineering programs. So we're almost getting to that 50% mark, which, so just to say, it's up from 29% 5 years ago. So it's at the student intake level, we are making a lot of progress, and we're graduating female engineers at a similar face as male engineers. So they study successfully. So just that bit of hope. There's a whole pipeline of young engineers, female engineers coming at industry. So if industry can just kindly catch them and help them to land on their feet on that side, that would be great. So Dr. Malusi Twala gave us a brief overview of the role of the Academy of Science of South Africa regarding its mandate to promote the advance of science in South Africa. And then Melody mentioned that, you know, the South African Academy of Engineering are a strategic partner of ASSAf, and also specifically in furthering engineering in South Africa and internationally. But both of them mentioned that, you know, the gender imbalance remain across the STEMI pipeline, all the way, you know, from the number of matriculants in maths and science, and more pronounced so at the higher degree levels and in the professional registration in the workplace. So this must be a priority to address, because we have, in other words, major talent that we are not utilizing to serve society and to, you know, to solve the problems of the world. So this is a loss for all of us. So this webinar is one way of addressing this to some extent, by creating awareness, by normalizing the struggles that we've all faced and are facing, and that help us to keep that grittiness and to keep carrying on. So Ms. Philadelphia Ngubeni shared her story and her role in advocating for women and for the next generation by bringing hope for women in science through outreach programs, visiting schools, telling female learners that they belong, that their contribution matters in science, in the science fields. And she mentioned that when women are empowered, their communities are uplifted. I thought that was a very beautiful statement and true. She advocates for mentorship and for fostering that sense of belonging among young women in STEM education. And she highlights the need to fix the foundation in science and maths to support African scientists and women engineers into their careers. And then Ms. Denai Magumelo shared how she developed to the impactful leader that she now is. And she highlighted also the importance of her parents, the support she received from her parents and encouragement from them also when she was a young person, but also, you know, that her grit to keep growing, and I, pun intended there, given her interest in the agricultural sector, but her grit to keep growing was really what led her along different paths through her career. Even though it was different than she initially envisioned, she grabbed the different opportunities that presented itself to her. And she gives hope to prospective students and young professionals who may feel at this stage that their choices or career path is still a bit uncertain and they're not quite sure that they're heading in the right direction. You know, given, you know, her background and the success she made of her career, I think you can grab onto that as a hope that it doesn't matter, you know, that you may start in a different place. You will grow into your strengths as you go along by utilizing your opportunities. But she also got real about the challenges of work-life balance as a female engineer, for mothers who remain burdened with the bulk of the childcare responsibilities. And navigating different careers in civil engineering required her to really remain agile. She believes there are support and development opportunities for young professionals. And we must engage in mentorship and be the role models to shape how industry is regulated, also to facilitate access for future female engineers where we do have a voice and a place at the table. And Dr. Gisela Keizer shared from 38 years of experience in the engineering sector, and she also highlights the wide range of career options that's now available in the sector, and she foresees that engineering will remain a really wonderful career choice. And in her life, a strong mother figure and also a female-only sibling environment really shaped her identity. I think it gave her the strength to follow an engineering career as a career, despite what in those days were not only heavy gender bias, but actually active gender discrimination. And there again, it made me realize what a long way we have already come. And it gives me hope, you know, that within the next 20 years, it will be drastically different. Because Gisela is about 20 years ahead of me, well, 18 years ahead of me. And although I also experienced a lot of gender bias through, especially in my younger career, I noticed how much less it really was compared to, you know, her experiences and the experience of other similarly aged female engineers that I have contact with. And so it really gives me a lot of hope for the generation that's now in the seats at the university. That I think it will be different for them, and it will be different for them thanks to you and thanks to us. So I'm really optimistic actually about where we are at and how fast it is going to start changing now. Back to Gisela's points, she really advocated that we must not perpetuate the gender bias that still remains. She echoed the difficulties of mothering and career progression within that context. She identified both of these factors as the main reason why we still struggle to keep females in the engineering profession. So the combination of gender bias and trying to balance this mothering aspect is really a big struggle for many female engineers. And here we can be part of the solution. So if we, as the older generation female engineers, can normalize this being a parent while being an engineer, can advocate for fathers to be more involved, can reduce the gender bias and the sexism in our own spaces by talking to people really, and by being the woman in the space, that will already go a long way. And advocating for others where we have a say and a place at the table. And Gisela also recognized in young female engineers that there's simmering anger there as a result of this unfairness, right? The gender bias is really unfair, and it does impact on us and on our careers. And she advises that you pick your battles, but most importantly, that you don't put yourself in a box. And that bringing your whole self to work will bring that extra something that really makes the difference. And there's a lot of value in that diversity. And then she also mentioned, you know, how she herself could really lead her team with empathy and with integrity during a crisis period, in no small part because of all her own experiences, you know, as a woman in engineering and the challenges that she navigated. And Ms. Arinau Nechivalana, she is proud to be a woman and a senior mechanical engineer, and she shared how she overcame significant challenges along the way, because she grew up in a large family with little resources, and finding creative solutions in daily life was part of her foundation. But really grit carried her through her studies, and despite academic and financial hurdles, also being one of very few female engineering students, she succeeded. And she recognizes also the need for female mentors to guide you through your career, specifically also guide you in navigating that parent-career conflict that we all, that many of us face. She survived basically by focusing her identity on her engineering skills and on her passion and on the positive impact her career can have on the world around her. And then also she really engaged with continuous professional development that bolstered her career, and she utilized the mentors that were available in her space. So if I can just end up to summarize, you know, the big themes here are the value of having role models, the value of engaging the mentors that are available in your spaces, the themes of challenges being gender bias and navigating the parenting career interface, finding that balance and navigating it also in the work environment. I think there were elements of how women cope with these challenges, which are significant, and that we cope through a combination of grit and a special creativity, bringing our unique strengths, also understanding, because of our different exposure, understanding different perspectives and different considerations, and being able to bring those also into our solutions as engineers in different environments. And that we really develop a certain emotional intelligence through all these challenges that we need to navigate. And that is a strength in our career as well. So there is some silver lining around these clouds that we have to face. And then if I can end up with what can you do for others? I think role models really are leveling the playing field, right? If those of us who studied in a time when there were very few females and no female lecturers, for example, no female managers, would understand how big of a normalization it is to see a manager in a female manager, and see a female engineer standing in front of a classroom, see a female CEO leading a company, see a female take that leadership role, that beyond mentoring, just seeing that you can have a massive impact on the way females see themselves in the space. So something that I realized, and maybe I should share a very small story here, is that in my young career, at some stage, I realized, well, I was actually in a situation where, let me first say this, I was also grappling with this anger that Gisela was mentioning, right? Where you start noticing these biases and the unfairness of it, and that it's not warranted, really. And while I was grappling with this, on the one hand, the one day I was visiting with a friend, and she's also a female engineer. She's also a structural engineer, and her husband is an accountant. And a toy was broken, and the next thing I know, I say, but you must ask Richard to fix it. And as the words left my mouth, I realized, oh my goodness, I am a sexist. And this was such an eye-opening moment, because I think what this showed me was that we internalize this. We internalize this. And then we box ourselves, as one of you said, then we put ourselves in a box, right? Because we start seeing the world through that very same lens that frustrates us so bad. And so if I can say what you can do for yourself is that internalized gender bias, put that microscope in what is going on here in your own mind, in your own subconscious way of looking at the world, because there you have a lot of control, right? It's highly frustrating to try and make a male see your point when you are being exposed to gender bias, because quite often they just don't see it and they don't get it, and it's really hard work to change their minds, and it's a bit of a waste of effort sometimes, really. But even so, engage in those discussions as well. But really, when you are challenging your own biases, then you can really make a big difference, because it changes the way you show up if you don't self-limit because of your unconsciously held beliefs like I had, apparently, about females and toy fixing. So, to wrap up, I think we've come a long way. I think there's a lot of female role models out there now, and it does break the ice in a sense. It does take away some of the friction for the next generation. And if you are the young generation, really challenge the way you think, and really lean in, sit at the table, engage, and don't self-limit. So that will be my words of advice. Continue to lean in, engage, and where you have a voice, advocate.
Thank you so much, Celeste. You did an absolutely remarkable job at summing up the events of today. And all I'm left with is to just take this opportunity to thank the audience, firstly, for participating and for being present. Without you, we would not have had a webinar. We would have been talking to ourselves. So thank you for joining us. And then I want to take this moment to actually thank all of the speakers, our panelists, for sharing insight into their experiences, Celeste, for your excellent sum up, and then obviously Dr. Twala and Philadelphia for your comments in opening remarks. Thank you so much for all of your efforts. It is definitely truly appreciated. And I think we've come away from this with some very insightful lessons that we could sort of implement within our own environments. I do think that it's important that we action these things, because often we end up in conversations like this and then we don't necessarily implement it. So if each one of us were to take something away from today, it would be, can you put your hand up to be a mentor? Or can you raise your hand to say, you know what, I need mentorship in this journey? And if each one in this call actually does that, then at least we've achieved something. But a lot of these webinars would not be possible without some key individuals behind the scenes. So I also want to take the opportunity to thank Helene Duffy from SAAE, who's actually been coordinating some of the initiatives together with other SAAE members. And also Rajeshri Marbir, who has actually been responsible for coordinating this entire event. Thank you to you as well, Raj. So I think I'm going to pause there now because we're way over time. But I think it's been really insightful, and I just want to leave you with a thought, though. Whilst we have been arguing the case that we need a lot of female role models and mentors, and we know that we have a challenge because there aren't that many around, and many of them are probably very occupied with multiple things. Do not discount the fact that we need the men in the room as well. And I sort of, Gisela and Danai as well, have been in a time where we didn't have that, but we also relied on our male mentors. So don't discount that. And, it's more about gender mainstreaming than women empowerment. So we need to be very conscious and deliberate about that. So I urge you to not just, focus and feel that there are not enough female mentors out there. Reach out to men as well. There are many of them that are very prepared to function as a business coach in this environment. So I urge you. So thank you all, and thank you for engaging with us. I mean, we haven't gotten to all of the Q&As, but hopefully there would be a follow-on session. And as one of our panelists stated, it shouldn't really necessarily just be about August month, where we focused around a lot of these interventions and initiatives. It should really be across the year. So hopefully we would start something that would actually, as a result of the partnership that we have, that we can maybe explore this in a lot more detail and depth. It would be nice to maybe, be instrumental in deriving policies around this as well. Thank you all.